Alright guys, so we are talking today about how to pick your loadouts on a Warjack for Warcaster Mechanika, and because I literally have everything laid out in front of you as you can see here, we're going to be talking about the Marcher World's Dusk Wolf today. And this was my thought process. You can use this for any of the factions, any of the other jacks. I just happen to have the Dusk Wolf, all the weapons, all the heads, and I can really just go over everything and lay out the whole thought process here. So that's the idea behind this. And yeah, I've had a lot of thinking on this because I've been just setting up my armies and what I want them to do. And it actually was a bit of a brain teaser, like what I actually wanted on this thing. Now, I initially built my Dusk Wolf with magnets involved, and that was just the A gear. And I didn't bother with the head because I didn't have small enough magnets, but, you know, I did magnetize the battle rifle, the flamethrower, and the Talon rocket pod, and the railgun, and the Ripper. So I could just go and switch these on and off at will. I did an okay job, but I kind of looked at it and I don't know that I necessarily want to magnetize these at any given time. So I really wanted to come up with like what is the loadout I want on this jack most of the time, or what am I going to want to use first, and then I can get other Dusk Wolves or Strike Raptors or whatever. So the way I broke this down is step one, define the role of the Warjack and pick your cortex. And here's why I think of this. Warcaster is kind of funny in that you only customize 3 things in the whole game. 1, your units, what you're actually composing the army of. 2, your cipher rack. And 3, the Warjack loadouts. So this is one of your customization points to really shore up a weak point or to drive home a very strong point of your army. Okay? So, taking a look at our Dusk Wolf card here, minus some glare, okay? So we have 3 health, we have speed 5, strength 4, mat 4, rat 4, defense 3, and arm 4. And we have 4 cortexes possible: the fighter, the neural net, the scout, and the sniper. Now, Dusk Wolf, I see a lot of people running with scout because it really is one of the better ones you could just pick in general, okay? So, if we look at what these all do, okay, really simply, fighter gives rapid strike, which means the model can make an extra melee attack with each of its melee weapons. So if I'm going to set this thing up with 2 Rippers, for instance, that's probably what I'm going to want to take, okay? Neural net, model gains a cumulative +1 defense bonus for each other friendly unit within 5 inches up to a bonus of +3. So that's great if I want to keep this thing alive, if it's going to be surrounded by other units and models. If it's not, that's kind of useless, and it's just not giving you any other buff. Scout, like I said, is probably the best generalist one for this particular jack. Gives it Pathfinder and Smart Lock, which means when it's charged, this model ignores cover when making a ranged attack. So you don't have to rely on your flamethrower. You can actually negate cover with any of these weapons here, which is pretty handy. The Pathfinder lets it get in range and in position to do what it needs to do as well. And then you have Sniper, which I think if you're going to go shooty is the second best, honestly. Advanced optics, models range weapons get +2 range. So blanket, any gun here gets +2 range, okay? And laid out, I believe this is fighter, sniper, neural net. I know you can't see the heads too well from here. And I glued on the scout because I didn't have a small enough magnet for that, and I figured that's what I'm going to use anyway. So step 1, figure out your role, and then assign the cortex. So if you're going to go shooty, you obviously want scout or sniper. If you want something that's just going to be a little tankier and a little more defensive, go neural net. Deploy it smartly, but obviously go neural net. If you want this thing to be melee, give it the fighter cortex. Very, very simple. Okay, so good. We're just going to roll with the fact that I picked scout. So this thing is going to be able to move more effectively across terrain, and it's going to ignore cover on shooting while charged. Pretty handy. Now, if you don't get all the weapon packs, you're not going to have all the cortexes and all the weapons. Again, I did here. So the next thing to figure out is what do you want this thing to do within that role. So I've picked scout. So this could easily be a mix of melee and shooty. Shooty is going to have an advantage of getting through cover. Melee is going to have the better chance of actually getting used because this thing will move more rapidly. It's able to get across ground without too much difficulty on terrain. So you could go the combined arms approach. You could give this thing, you know, any of the weapons up here. You could easily give it the battle rifle or the flamethrower. You could easily give it the Ripper. You could make a decent A-list loadout, meaning weapon pack A loadout. Okay. The way I look at this first is just really picking out the role and going with what you want there. So if I want to make this a shooty jack, I'm going to give you my thought process on what I'm actually doing, and then I'll go over other combinations, okay? So if I want to make this a shooty jack, I automatically know that I don't want the Widow Flare mine layer, so that's out, okay? Let me get the heads out of the way here, because I'm not using them right now. Okay, so up top that leaves me the Talon rocket pod, the railgun, and the blazer. At this point, it's kind of worth figuring if you want to think about a main opponent or a main faction you end up playing against. You know, am I going against ISA all the time, or necessarily I don't want blast weapons because they have armor? Am I taking out stuff with a lot of Warjacks where I really want to use a railgun and just obliterate them as rapidly as possible? Do I want to set things on fire? Okay. In my case, I went middle ground. I went with decent range and power and blast, and I went with the Talon rocket pod. Okay, so that was my first pick, and I just said good. So we are going with rockets. All right. Now again, keeping with the idea that this is going to be all shooty, let's ignore the melee right now. So the Ripper and the Impaler are going to go elsewhere for the moment. Okay, so this leaves me with a battle rifle, a slug gun, a flamethrower, and a particle accelerator. Now, 2 of these are fairly straightforward. And points-wise, by the way, we only have 5 weapon points on this jack, and we've used 2 of them with the Talon, so I only have 3 left. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, that gives me... And again, this kind of broke down into the weapon packs, which was interesting, but this gives me the flamethrower, which is range 10, power 3. It is a spray, and it causes fire for 2 points. And the battle rifle, which is range 12, power 4, mechanical optics. While this model is charged, the weapon gets +4 range. That's sort of the same buff that the Ranger squads will get. This can also get if it's charged. So these 2 they seem like a smart option to me. And that's honestly what I ended up going with. So my jack is going to be the Scout Cortex, the Talon rocket pod, battle rifle, and the flamethrower. And this gives me a lot of different effects that I actually create. Number 1, I've got a pretty well-rounded range. 12 inches for the rockets, 12 for the battle rifle, unless it's charged, which is 16, even better, and 10 for the flamethrower. So this thing has a decent threat range in terms of the shooting. Number 1. Number 2, the rockets and the rifle are power 4, the flamethrower is power 3. Whether this is charged or not, that's going to ignore cover. So even if I can't necessarily charge this thing and take advantage of other effects, I still have something that goes through cover. I still have something that also does blast. And again, if I'm playing against ISA, maybe that's not the best way to go. But against anyone else, anything else, that's still going to be handy. It's a decent power. Oh well. So I think this is rounded enough that I can do what I want to do with it, which is all shooting. It's decently ranged. Yes, you could take the blazer, and yes, you could take the railgun, and you can, have an absolute long-range fest between the 18-inch on the railgun and the 14-inch on the blazer. That's okay. I can live without those. I want something that's a little more middle of the road. It's going to be able to move around and take advantage of mobility. And I think this is more bang for the buck against all comers. The battle rifle is just going to work on anything. The flamers, it's going to ignore cover on anything, That's just a decent standard loadout. Now, let's go back a minute, and let's say... this is the other thing I was kind of thinking of, actually. I want something that's going to create more effects. I want something that's actually going to do a little bit more in the way of crazy. Well, good. If we look at our heavy weapons again, we have the railgun, which... absolute beast of a weapon. I love this thing. It's very big. It's very chunky. I think it's the longest range gun in the game. Range 18, power 5. Arc booster, attacking with this weapon before making a damage roll. This model can spike to cause the target to suffer a -1 arm. That's going to go through armor like crazy. And the blazer has spread and fire effect, 14-inch, power 4. So maybe I want to set a bunch of things on fire and just take advantage of that continual damage. Okay, then I'm probably looking at something like Blazer, Flamethrower, and I can either, you know, if I'm worried I'm going to get too close, I can throw on a melee. I can throw on a Ripper. I believe I got the points for that. Ripper is 1. Flamethrower is... One moment. Okay, maybe not. Flamethrower is 2 points, so I would literally use up all my weapons between the Flamethrower and the Blazer. So that's out, sadly. But I have the Battle Rifle, the Slug Gun, and the Particle Accelerator. And I could switch for either of the melees. The weird guns on this one, again, this is just thinking with effects, are these two. Okay? The Slug Gun, this blocky boy right here, is an 8-inch power 3 weapon, and this will actually push a target 3 inches. So this is a handy little trick if you want to move something off an objective or out of range. Slug Gun is a 1-point cost weapon to do that. Okay? And then the Particle Accelerator. Now this one requires a little bit of arc economy. It's 2 points, power 1, 8-inch range, high intensity. When this model makes an attack, while charged, add 2 power dice to the attack, roll for each arc on it instead of just 1. So if you're camping arc on your Jack, this thing is going to have a lot easier time hitting and getting strikes through. The thing I don't like about this is the short range. Okay, so if I'm going to take the 2 of these, that's 2 points for the Particle Accelerator, 1 for the Slug Gun. I can't actually take the Blazer. I'm literally stuck either with the Wildflower, which might make sense there. That I would normally stick on a melee Jack, but this thing basically just blows things up around it. If this thing's going to get close, that might not be a bad idea. You can also use the Slug Gun to push things away. So the point I guess I'm making here is you want to think with synergies of your weapons at that point to really flesh out that role. Okay? The third thing I really want to go over is magnetizing versus static build. Now, like I said, I did magnetize this. Not perfectly. This is actually the first model I've ever magnetized, but I did magnetize the weapons that I was originally planning to use, and those end up being what I'm sticking with, quite honestly. So I have the option to magnetize the rest of these, leave them all unfixed, and then I can swap my weapon loadouts as I choose and as I please. I wasn't nuts about doing that just because it wasn't a perfect magnetization job, and I'm only sticking with the one cortex. So maybe what I'll do, if I got another Dusk Wolf, maybe I'd do the same thing. In other words, glue on the head and leave the rest of the hard points flexible. So I can just change loadouts but use the similar cortex. I just know, okay, good, I've got a Dusk Wolf with Sniper. I've got one with Neural Net. I've got one with Scout. I just have that at the ready, and then I magnetize everything else. That's a choice you have to make. Magnetizing is not hard to do. If you are backed off on it, if you are worried about it, if you're thinking you're going to do a bad job, don't. That's just something to learn, and it totally can be done, and it is a valid option. If you don't want to permanently get locked into a loadout, you can totally do that. I could even just magnetize the weapons I have here. That I just got the B pack. I can magnetize all those, and I can change my loadouts as I need to. So it really is not a bad way to go. But if you're going to go static, you probably want to pay a little more attention to what you're putting on and what role you're going to have this model in, and be ready to buy 1 or even 2 more. Not necessarily for the same army, but so you can do all these different roles, so you can change things out as you need to. So those are my thoughts on Warjack Loadouts. I hope this has been helpful for you guys. Leave a like or any comments with anything you found helpful in terms of picking your loadouts. What helped you make your decisions? If you changed things, you know, a couple games in, if you decided your loadout was absolute crap, I would love to hear about that kind of thing in the comments. And I will see you guys later.